How's it going, everyone? And I am back from a little bit of a hiatus. Obviously, it's been a couple weeks since I've done an episode of the unofficial WCC Hoops podcast. I was out of town, kind of busy, so it's just playing some catch up after the NBA draft and getting kind of resettled into where we are right now and everything else. Obviously, the big one, not the big one, but like just the thing everyone is paying attention to is NBA Summer League and just seeing how all the guys are doing there. Number of WCC alums amongst the group there for the Summer League. Long list actually. Like we have there. There's three from Pepperdine, three from Santa Clara, four from USF, a couple from St. Mary's, and then obviously the big group, seven from Gonzaga. So a lot of guys to pay attention to, and as we kind of expected, not a lot of them getting a ton of playing time. Uh, Typically, you only see like the guys who are going to either be like either the draftees, some of the G League guys, second year guys getting a lot of playing time to kind of see what they have. So there's a good number of WCC guys who are getting some run. But I don't think you can read too much into what we've seen so far. Just a couple of the ones that we know that have played pretty well to this point, or at least like you are going to pay more attention to. Chet Holmgren, obviously, is going into his first healthy year for OKC, and he's had a couple of solid games. I think he's averaging something like 13 points, 10 rebounds, uh, 3 blocks. So again, it's like he's putting up some pretty decent numbers. He hasn't like jumped off the screen as of yet, but again, like he's still working back into game shape and everything else. So I'm not too worried about that. The other one, I think a lot of people are paying attention to, at least like obviously here in the Bay Area, paying attention to, is what's happening with Brandon Pajemski. He was taken by the Warriors at the 19th overall pick, and I think the summer league he's having so far is pretty indicative of, I think, who he was at Santa Clara, at least to this point. I mean, the shooting hasn't been there quite yet. He hasn't found that shooting touch, but he's rebounded well. He has created for his teammates. Again, he hasn't jumped off the page as of yet, but making, I think he's about what we thought, what I thought he would be to this point. Like he's not going to overly impress you, but he's going to make really smart plays out there. He's going to put in the effort on both ends of the floor. He's looking to create for others, and even just a couple of the segments of him talking about what he's working on and what he's trying to focus on. I think it was a very consistent answer. Is that he's going to help the team win in any way he can. And on nights that might be scoring, on nights that might be rebounding, on nights that might be passing the ball, being the playmaker, a lot of that is, again, very consistent with what we have seen from Brandon Pajemski to this point. And another summer league guy, I think that's actually kind of like jumped out, at least like you've started to notice a little bit more. And it's not one of the guys from the last couple of years. It's actually someone who's been in the summer league for a few seasons now, or at least someone who's been in the G League for a few seasons now, and that's the St. Mary's alum Jordan Ford. He has had some really nice performances for Sacramento. He's been with the Sacramento Kings for a couple of years now, trying to find his way onto that roster, which is a very competitive Kings roster, especially at the guard spot. We'll see if he's able to get call up from the big league club. I think he's played pretty well. His shot looks the same as it did at St. Mary's. His patience in the game, I think, is the one thing that is the most noticeable difference. And this is definitely one of those things in the summer league you start to notice is the age in which some of the players, just their experience, makes a difference, and how much smarter they are about the game of basketball than some of the 19, 20-year-olds coming in. Jordan Ford is 25. So, like, again, like just years of playing the game and understanding spots and everything else. He's set his team up really well. His shot is still there. He's still one of the fastest guys on the floor. There was one of the plays the other night where it did kind of make me envious and just not reminiscent, but just thinking about the missed opportunity, obviously, that the pandemic prevented all of us from seeing, of that St. Mary's team getting into the tournament and seeing what they could have done. Obviously, we know that the WCC would have had likely 3 teams in the tournament that year. All 3 of them looked like they were probably going to be top 8 seeds. So it would have been a fascinating run to see not only that team, but also BYU, and then also see what Gonzaga could have done in that 2020 tournament. And it got me thinking, looking at all the guys that were there, and especially the guys like Pajemski, who we didn't necessarily see coming, and Jalen Williams, who we didn't see making that meteoric rise. Who are some of those guys who might be the breakout stars going into next year in the WCC? And I think there's a lot of candidates that you can kind of point to and think about. And some might be maybe a little bit more, maybe they're obvious, and maybe I don't want to necessarily count them. I think of like someone maybe who has been around a little bit more, or already has started to see kind of like that promise of, like, if Anton Watson turns it around and becomes an offensive force for Gonzaga, is that really being a breakout star? I don't think so. Same thing for like Brian Nebhart. He's an established guy. I don't think that necessarily counts. Aiden Mahaney would not count. Someone like Graham Ike, even though he's new to the league, not, again, established college basketball player. We know what he's about. I wouldn't count that. So then who are some of these other guys who might be the breakout stars across the WCC? And I'm going to focus on at least a few, and I'm going to start with Pepperdine, because I feel like we always have like one from Pepperdine that's going to jump out the screen. And to an extent, this is a known commodity, but seeing what he can develop to in year 2 is going to be fascinating to me, and that's Javon Porter. We know what Javon Porter what we saw him capable of doing last year. And I think going into this year, it's about that consistency and whether or not he can take that even greater next step in his progression, in his development, and really kind of taking advantage of just the opportunity that he's going to be given. Because without Max Lewis on that team, without Mike Mitchell Jr. on that team, there's going to be a lot more opportunity for him to be a little bit more of a focal point in the offense. Between he and Houston Millett, like those are their 2 guys. Those are the 2 go-to guys. Jan Zedek isn't there anymore either. Carson Basham is also not there. So again, lots of opportunity. I love Javon Porter and what he was able to bring last year. I think his next step, obviously not only just filling out, but then also getting more of that shooting touch from different spots on the floor. He was an absolute monster inside the paint. What can he do to develop that game a little bit more? He's just one guy that kind of sticks out to me as one of those potential breakout stars, even more so going into next year. So this next one might be a little bit of a cheat, because he was established in a different league, but did have an off year, not an off year, but just the way he was used, he didn't get a great opportunity a year ago. And I'm thinking of the LMU transfer, or the newest one of the newest LMU players, Justice Hill, excuse me. Justice Hill's coming in, actually having played at LSU last year. He really didn't get a whole lot of playing time. He wasn't used all that effectively. And this was coming off of 2 years removed from him being a focal point of what Murray State did in that 30-win season of theirs just a couple of years ago. He was on that Murray State team that beat USF in the NCAA tournament. This is a guy who not only can get his own shot and get his points, but he's going to create for others. In those 2 tournament games against USF, he had 15, 5, and 9 in 45 minutes. Against St. Peter's, who, yes, that's the St. Peter's team who went on the run. He had 19, 2, and 4. So Justice Hill is a guy who's going to come in and make an immediate impact for that LMU team. So again, like maybe it's a little bit cheating on the breakout star front, but yeah, I think like that's a guy who's going to come in and help right away for that LMU squad and going in, moving up a league from the OVC is going to be an adjustment period. So there's still that. It's like the level of play across the league is going to be one step up. So while he's used to competing at a high level, not only at Murray State, but then also at LSU, this is still going to be a challenge for him to be able to readjust to another league and be able to find his rhythm, which I think he's going to be one of those guys who figures it out quickly. So another one that I think is going to be, and I there's a few with St. Mary's I feel like that could fit the bill, and I'm gonna pick one, not to, or at least I'm gonna say like there's two of them, and I think that Joshua Jefferson is going to be one of those guys, but the guy I want to focus on, uh, who I think we started to see glimpses of what he could be toward the end of last year, and he's going to get a much greater opportunity to show what he can do this year, is Augustus Marshallonis. I think he is primed to be one of those guys, and we talked with assistant associate head coach from St. Mary's, Justin Joyner, a few weeks back, and he also has talked about Marshallonis being that next guy and how his development. This is year 3 for Marshallonis, so this is kind of like that leap year in the St. Mary's program, much like we saw Mitchell Saxon make that leap last year. That this could be a guy who's going to make a huge leap and be a much larger component of that offense and also the success of that team. We saw in stretches during the NCAA tournament where he was stepping in for Logan Johnson and had to do a little bit more, or he stepped in for Aiden Mahaney, had to do a little bit more, and went and met the challenge almost every step of the way. Also, like again, anybody who has like watched this St. Mary's team play on any level of consistency knows just how strong Marshallonis is, and going into next year, just his strength, his ability to control the offense. He and Mahaney in that backcourt together is going to be a great 1-2 punch. Obviously, Mahaney we expect to also kind of make a little bit more of a leap as well, even though it did look like teams started to adjust to him. The veteran in that backcourt is going to be Marshallonis. He's going to be, I think, make a big leap going into next year. So as far as breakout stars, he's definitely on my short list for being one of those guys. So, and I think about just another one that could be on that list, and maybe it's kind of like the low hanging fruit for this USF squad, or actually, excuse me, for this USF squad is Malik Thomas. Coming out of USC, was one of the more highly rated guys coming out of high school. He's going to get a lot of opportunity at USF because that is a team that just has not holes, but like there's going to be a huge shift in the roster from a year ago. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity for him to step up into a different role, break out. Maybe we can include Marcus Williams in that grouping because again, like he wasn't playing heavy minutes, but you could see just the increased role that a Marcus Williams could play. So maybe like the Marcus Williams Malik Thomas combo is going to be kind of like that breakout pairing for USF, just much like almost we saw just a few years back when it was Bouye and Shabazz together for the first time. We know USF is always able to reload on the guard spot, so this is going to be, again, another couple of guys I think are going to be big components of what they're able to do. So I'm going to just give you one more because I feel like you can talk about it like forever and ever. The other guy I feel like could end up being someone who could break out is going to be Tyree Bryan from Santa Clara. The transfer from Charleston Southern, big kid, 6'6", 200 pound. Like this is a guy who's going to be able to, I think, physically impose himself very quickly in the WCC. And I'm not And yes, you can talk about Jalen Benjamin. I think Jalen Benjamin is one of those guys who's going to be a little bit more established. I don't think breakout is for him. I think so. That's why like Tyree Bryan fits that bill a little bit more. He was averaging 10 points a game last year. I think there could be a leap there as well. Also because he's coming into his junior, I think it was sophomore, junior year. So again, just building off of what he was able to do a year ago, going into a Santa Clara system that knows how to develop these guys. Again, we talk about just back-to-back years of what we saw from Jalen Williams, Brandon Pajemski. Let's even talk about the development of Carlos Stewart before he left for LSU. Like, there's a lot of guys. Keyshawn Justice. Keyshawn Justice is in the summer league this year. There's a lot of guys you can talk about the Santa Clara program, what Herb Sendek has been able to do, and how they are building. They continue to find guys and just reload. And now I think it's a tall order to ask of, is there another Jalen Williams? Is there another Brandon Pajemski? I don't know if that's going to be the case. I think like hitting 3 straight years of finding an NBA first rounder is a tall order for any program to find. And for Santa Clara, maybe even more so. But then this is, again, Herb Sendek has been able to do this time and time again at stop and stop again. So I think there's plenty of promise here for all of these guys. I think there's a lot of potential for these breakout stars to really make an impact early. And there's going to be a lot of opportunity for a lot of these guys. LMU, lots of opportunity. USF, lots of opportunity. Santa Clara, lots of opportunity. St. Mary's, because of the way they develop, lots of opportunity. Gonzaga, I think they just brought in a bunch of established guys. And this is actually the one thing that might be hurtful to some of the other guys on that Gonzaga roster is that because of the expectations of that program, I think there's some of the guys on that roster who are just not going to get the opportunity that they might have otherwise. I think of guys like Ben Gregg, who I think was also could have been slated for that. He's that next breakout star. But is he going to get the opportunity to get those minutes that are going to allow him to do that? Will he force his way into the rotation because of that? He has to, but then he's going to have to get by Anton Watson, Graham Ike. Like there's guys in front of him he's going to have to be better than to be able to break into that rotation on a more consistent basis, to be the quote breakout star. And I don't know if he's going to have that opportunity. Same things could be said for a Dusty Stromer as well. Like I don't know like if he's going to have a ton of opportunity to really step into some of these roles because of the transfers that have been brought in to help them immediately. And you could say the thing for Braden Huff or whatnot on the deeper and deeper onto that roster, because it is going to be so hard to break that rotation, especially when, again, this is Mark View typically runs 7-8 guys. I think finding the breakout star coming from Spokane may not be that this year. We might be waiting another year before we see another breakout star from that program. Right now, this year, we have a lot of established guys. This past year, a lot of established guys. So going into this season, I don't see they're going to be more reliant upon what they know as opposed to the unknown. I think there's a lot of unknown across the conference, which is exciting and scary for a lot of these programs. There's a lot of unknown for LMU, a lot of unknown for USF, a lot of unknown for Santa Clara, a lot of unknown for Pepperdine, and on and on. And looking at this list, so if I go to Tyree Bryan, Javon Porter, Justice Hill, Gustas Marshallonis, we can mention Marcus Williams as another guy, which I like hesitant to say that name because I feel like he's a known commodity to an extent. There's a lot of guys on this list who are potential guys who are going to be those breakout stars. And then there's a couple others I can say, like Jordan Ross, the freshman who's coming in from St. Mary's. I think he's going to actually make an impact immediately. Um, Mongolian Mike Sharazjams from coming in from Dayton. I think there's also potential there that he could come in and help them out right away. Whether it's breakout star status or not, I I'm not going to jump to that level yet, but he's going to be in that mix. Joshua Jefferson's going to be in that mix of guys. And just thinking about each one of these programs, each one of the potentials for Santa Clara, St. Mary's, USF, Gonzaga. This is it is going to be, I think, a not a rough, but there's going to be more growing pains in those first few weeks in that first month than I think we've seen in a while for a lot of those teams. Now, those growing pains are going to be felt all across college basketball because almost everyone is dealing with the same thing. Because of the transfer portal, because of player movement, you have a lot of teams who are going to be trying to figure it out on for a while. St. Mary's will be one of the few exceptions to that because a lot of them are at these. You have almost no turnover whatsoever outside of a couple guys. Alex Stukas being one of the key returners of that group is obviously incredibly helpful for the Gales. But really considering what are we going to get out of some of these teams? What are we going to see? And obviously, we're way, way early to think about what these teams are potentially going to look like, what the outlook for any of them are, because there's still a lot of question marks about Portland and San Diego, and what about Pacific? There's still question marks about a lot of these teams, and so without we're still kind of piecing everything together, and we think we know what's going to happen. We think these players are going to be good. We think they're going to be able to develop well, but we won't know until they hit the court. We won't know until we see them uh, playing against some higher level competition. And we obviously are still waiting on to see what some of the schedules are going to look like. We have gotten some level of who's going to be playing who. We know Gonzaga is going to be in the Maui. We know St. Mary's is going to be playing in the Continental Tires Classic in that event. We know that LMU is going to be playing in the Cayman Islands tournament. So we know some of these components are happening. We know there's a four-team WCC event down in Phoenix in December. There's a lot of different matchups and games that we know are starting to fill up the schedule, fill up the calendar, and that's where we're going to see how these teams start to figure it out before they start to see each other again in a 9-team WCC in December, January, whenever the schedule does start to kick in. And we're going to continue to follow along with Summer League just to kind of see how everything's going. We're going to round back and get into a little bit of a rhythm. I'll get into a little bit of a rhythm, getting some interviews back in. We'll start to reach out and start getting those all wrapped up and out to you. So this one will be a little bit of a shorter episode. So thanks for hopping on. Thanks for catching up with me on the Unofficial WCC Hoops podcast. Obviously, you can always find me on Twitter, on TikTok. You can actually now find me on Threads as well. Same username at Post by Zach. Go ahead and follow me there. If you're one of the early adopters I think there's already 100 million plus people over there. So one of the many early adopters on that platform, go ahead and find me over there as well. We'll continue WCC content on that platform as well. All right. With that, I'll wrap it up. Again, follow on all the things, subscribe on the YouTube channel, all that sort of stuff. And I will catch you later.